Welcome back, everyone, to Bankruptcy with Ben. And it seems like every day in the news, there's another bankruptcy filing, another big name that's in bankruptcy. And you have that at the same time combined with the new tariffs that the Trump administration just rolled out. And there's been a lot of debate in the media and the economic sphere about whether the tariffs are a good thing, are they a bad thing, are they good for the economy, is it bad for the economy? And you have people from all sides of the political divide arguing over it. And we've been waiting to see when is there going to be the next bankruptcy filing that blames the tariffs for the bankruptcy filing. And now we have it, except it's not from the new tariffs. It's from a very, very old tariff rule that predates even the Trump administration. And that is Forever 21's most recent bankruptcy filing. So, for background, Forever 21 was once considered a leader in fast fashion. And now, for the second time since 2019, they're back in bankruptcy. This time, they say they're going to get it right and they're going to sell all their assets and close down all their stores. And someone else, presumably, is going to buy it. And what the new version looks like post bankruptcy remains to be seen. But it's very interesting to see probably the main reason they blame on their bankruptcy filing is actually tariffs, but not the new tariffs. So, without further ado, let's have a look. Declarations filed by the company. Again, this sets the story, explains the background. How did they get here? Where do they go from here? So you have Stephen Colombe, who declares that he is the chief restructuring officer. Again, this means he's spearheading their efforts to rebuild everything in a way that will actually allow them to escape this financial mess that they're in and come out with a newer, stronger, better, leaner company, which may be owned by someone else other than Forever 21, and it may end up being just kind of piecemeal of what it once was. But regardless, they're having this financial burden. This person, Stephen Colombe, is tasked with turning everything around, getting a solution going. So let's get into their introduction. This gives us the background. The debtors, meaning Forever 21, they sell trendy clothing and accessories to customers in the United States, primarily at brick and mortar stores. And we're going to see that's actually one of the key components is that they're brick and mortar as opposed to an online retailer. The other kind of interesting thing to note is when they say trendy clothing. It's one of those kind of, adjectives, vague words, which can mean a lot of different things. But the point is they're trying to make themselves look good and tell the court, we were this great business. We sold this great clothing product. And unfortunately, things happened, which are causing us some kind of trouble. But, we were a good company. And not only that, they sold it at some of the most desirable shopping malls in the country. And again, this is actually very good. This is what you're supposed to do as, the lawyer, is highlight all the good aspects of your company and try to explain why you had a good company and the company can have a successful Chapter 11. What that will look like, in this case, that means they want to sell it. But in order to sell it, they have to have a product that is desirable to be sold. So it's something that other people or other buyers will actually want to purchase. And now, furthermore, as we said, this is their second bankruptcy since 2019. We're not going to get so much into the first bankruptcy other than to say they filed in 2019. They had their own set of financial struggles back then. But they said they were able to continue back then by simply getting investments and additional financing and closing down some of their stores. Here, it looks like they're going to do full scale, close down everything. So what happened? So first thing they blame it on, they say, okay, COVID. And we all know COVID is going to be the excuse that's going to be used for the next decade. It's been 5 years already since the pandemic. To be fair, some of the financial impacts are still being felt by many, many people in the economy. But we're going to be seeing COVID, the COVID being a reason for all sorts of people's woes is not going away anytime soon. And they say what happened? COVID came, interest rates rose, it caused our business to go up. Everything was more expensive. We had to pay people more money, and everything got more competitive. And now, furthermore, that is now coupled with competition from the online sector. Here, though, the online sector, this is the point that's very interesting because they're blaming tariffs. What do they say? The debtor's business has been materially and negatively impacted by the ability for online retailers to take advantage of the de minimis exemption, which exempts goods valued under $800 from import duties and tariffs. Certain non-U.S. online retailers that compete with the debtors, such as Temu and Shein, have taken advantage of this exemption and therefore have been able to pass on significant savings to consumers. So again, let's back up. Temu and Shein, if they're selling a $500 washing machine from China, well, if now they have to ship it to the United States, and now the United States would normally charge, let's just say, a 5% tariff. So if it's $500, they're charging a 5% tariff. Now you add on another $50. So it's now $550. However, because it's $800 or less, or really less than $800, now you don't have to tack on that extra $50 because it's less than $800. So what they're saying is, and it's a little bit complicated, but the basic point is that Temu and Shein, they will function similarly to Amazon, where you want to buy a washing machine. So the importer now is the end user. So Temu is saying on their website, we're selling it for $500. But we can sell for $500 as opposed to $550 because there's no tariffs that are going to have to get paid. So normally, if John Smith wants to buy a washing machine and there would otherwise be this 5% tariff, so you'd have to spend $550 to pay for the tariff because he is now the importer. He's importing this washing machine for himself from China, and therefore he'd have to pay this extra $50. Not so. Less than $800. Nope. You're fine. You're golden. You don't need to pay it. But now you look to Forever 21. Forever 21 is not shipping things directly to consumers, and therefore they're not going to have an individual order under $800. They're purchasing millions of dollars worth of goods because they're storing it in their own warehouses and sending it to their own stores for sale. So it's not being sent to a consumer. Therefore, they're buying on these wholesale levels, and therefore they have to pay these tariffs. And therefore, because they have to pay these tariffs, they cannot erase that cost. So they have to, in a sense, pass it on to the consumer, at least in part. And they're saying that just made it too expensive. And I'll show there's a chart, which is a phenomenal chart, explains everything very well. So back to what we're saying here is they go on. Consequently, retailers that must pay duties and tariffs to purchase product for their stores and warehouses in the United States, such as the company Forever 21, have been undercut, meaning we cannot pass that savings on to the consumer because we have to pay for it. That takes away from our bottom line. Now, they attempted to contract and partner with Shein in 2023 to try to get around that. It didn't work out. And now, because of these tariffs, we had all these financial troubles, and we say, you know what? This competition is too much. Let's go into bankruptcy, and we're going to efficiently liquidate all of the stores. Let's see what else they have here. Okay. We're going to do a little bit of the background here. But again, we've covered the main point, which is they're blaming this tariff rule. They don't even say when the rule went into effect. Has it been in effect since before 2019? Since after 2019? Was it before the first bankruptcy? After the first bankruptcy? Why are other companies, I mean, presumably they're not the only brick and mortar retailer. So how come other companies are able to nevertheless not be undercut by these online consumers, by these online retailers? I'm sorry. And another point just to kind of think about is if they're wholesalers, shouldn't they anyway be getting discounts for bulk purchases that maybe other companies like Temu would not get because they're not buying it in bulk? So they don't discuss that. Again, they're kind of shifting the narrative to be the way they want it and say it's an external factor. It's really this bad law, and it's this bad law that hurt us. But let's go on. Say Forever 21 was founded in 1984 and has since been a leader in the fast fashion industry. It began as a 900 square foot store in California. Through the 80s and 90s, expanded throughout the US and then globally. At its peak, they had 43,000 people, over $4 billion in sales, and operated internationally. So again, an enormous business. They had vibrant clothing, jewelry, handbags, eyewear, scarves, shoes, thousands of accessories. So again, they sold everything under the sun. 2019, they had financial distress because their foreign expansion, they're saying, didn't go the way they wanted. So they filed for bankruptcy in 2019. They were able to sell some stores, and they formed even a joint venture with some of their landlords. They kind of teamed up with their landlords to kind of say, okay, we owe all this rent, and we'll create some kind of partnership to get around that and to kind of work together so we can get out of this mess. Okay, let's see what else we want to cover. That's the basic idea. They get into the structure of the company. Here, they're going to be borrowing $1.1 billion. Let's see if there's anything else that's worth noting before we wrap up. Okay. As briefly described above, the debtors negotiated with and entertained bids from 3 reputable and experienced liquidators before engaging the current liquidator that they now hired and to close the stores. So again, that's their plan, is they're just going to fire sale everything, and now they have a liquidator that they've actually entered into a contract with in order to actually get this done and get all the stores closed and liquidated. So that's it for the declaration. It's a very common theme that we're seeing. Stores, these big stores, they often want to go into liquidation. That's what they think is going to serve them the best. The main point that I wanted to bring out is the tariffs. That's been a hot topic, and now we've seen the first kind of quote-unquote victim of the tariffs, except it's not from the new tariff policy, it's an old tariff policy. How that will play out in terms of any new tariff policies, whether it'll change any decision-making with the new tariff policies, all that remains to be seen. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, that's all we got for now. See you all on the next episode.